Hi, good morning. This is Lakhi Singh, and we are live in the studio today. And for the drive time with Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. I'm now waiting for VJ Sal to come on, and our VVIP guest, Mr. Ninder Singh Johal. They'll be waiting backstage for us. So I hope you're all well and you're having a great week. Um, so there's lots of topical things we'll be discussing with Ninder Singh today. And we'll be looking at what are the best top 10 business and property strategies uh, in this market where there's a lot of unknowns, especially to do with COVID-19 and pending lockdowns because another lockdown apparently from the 15th of December. So a lot going on behind the scenes. We have now a special guest, Ninder Singh, coming on. So I'm adding him on. Sat Sri Akal ji.
Good morning, Sat Sri Akal. You good?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Busy day ahead, but then I think it's busy day for everybody.
That's right. It's very well. There's so much going on. That sort of variables in today's market.
That's
So you
right.
can't really how do you say have enough time, I suppose, in the day to be able to be keeping up with the news and everything else at the same time.
No. And you good?
I'm very well. Just super busy as well. But trying to not to get caught up in the busyness, but trying to make some business.
Yeah,
Boom, boom.
nice.
Okay, so today's topic is really what are the top 10 strategies in property and business to deal with the maze of all the issues surrounding COVID-19 and lockdown. So it's a bit more of a generic topic, but I thought we'll try and come up with 10 strategies which can help people to just ensure that they're thinking outside the box during this time. So it's a sort of consolidation of all the things that we've probably discussed in the last 10 shows or so. Shows or so.
Yeah.
Trying to get my words out. Before we go on, we've got a special shout out to Meena Kapoor, John Smith, Deborah Sophia Magdalene, who's saying good morning, Lucky. So I'm not sure whether you're aware we had Deborah on yesterday and the day before. Yesterday we talked about the top 20 health tips in terms of wellness for anybody who's now maybe locked up at home or had to work from home and they're not seeing too much light in their day because they've got to be working from home and not able to get out, especially with all the lockdowns. So that was really, really, really good, actually. How's your week been? Tell us a bit more.
Well, tomorrow or today, this comes out, which is the second issue.
Fantastic.
And it's quite good. The headline is How I Lost $710 million. And so this guy gives his story on how he lost that. It's a very interesting piece. We've got an interview in here with the chair of Tesco's who talks about how to manage a big operation, biggest retailer. We've got 7 days in the life of the Sunday Times business editor, and he describes his 7 days, quite astonishing. We've got the president of the British Chambers of Commerce who explains what the outcome will be of Brexit, and she's a Baroness Ruby McGregor. She was one of the only female CEOs in the FTSE 250. We have a guy who used to sell drugs. Actually, it was proper drugs, not the dodgy drugs. He worked for a pharmaceutical company, but now runs quite an inspiring smaller food company, which is now doing well. We got an entrepreneur.
It's not a coincidence that his name's Al Pacino, is it?
No, it isn't. No, so there we go. This will be interesting. We talked to an entrepreneur who's black and disabled, and so we said to him, which was the bigger challenge? And something you'll be interested in, buyers and sellers looking for their next move in property. So there's a big article around that. A couple of articles around leadership on people, how they coped with COVID and how they're progressing. So that's the big story about the 700.
So, okay. So what's this gentleman's name?
Dinesh Damajai. He ran e-bookers.
Yeah, I think I've met him once in passing because he was, let's just say, without saying too much about the company I used to work for, he used to be one of the clients in one of my companies that I used to work in as a quite a senior person. So
Okay.
small world. So I have actually met him, got his business card, funnily enough.
Nice.
Spoken to him a couple of times. Sorry?
I've done a podcast with him already. That will come out on the 6th of January. And this afternoon, we're doing some filming with a lady who took over an organization that was failing, had high staff turnover. All the stakeholders were revolting, and she had to lead this organization into safety. And it's interesting. It's actually a school. And so I just got some stats here, just for an example. We talk about how to manage out of a crisis. Staff retention was 32%. So 60 odd percent were leaving. She turned it around to 97%. The pupil roll, in other words, number of customers coming through the school, was falling. Now it's oversubscribed. Financial health, it was in deficit. It's now got a surplus. And first choice applications, in other words, kids who decided to buy their school first, was only 41, but now it's 151. So she turned it all round in 5 years, and this year she was given an OBE for turning around what was a failing organization. So today she'll talk to me about leadership and some of the techniques she used to turn around a failing organization, and that leadership can be applied to any organization. So that's going to be quite interesting today when I talk to her about an hour.
So quite a lot of information there. I think that magazine itself probably, that could be a 7 days worth of material for the whole show here.
Yeah. Because I've been asked to run a mastermind group based on just a magazine. So every week we pick up an article from the magazine and take it apart and see what lessons we can learn from it. Absolutely right. So that's a great idea. But we've already started working on that idea already, but it's a great idea.
Fantastic. So I think the scopes of what you can do, I think, with the magazine are now pretty much amazing, because you can now, I suppose, once now the vaccine is out and there's a potential light at the end of the tunnel from what people can see, there's a huge potential now the business probably to be back on the event side, I presume. Are you now planning your events back again?
Yeah. So over Christmas, we're going to be planning the events, and then I think in January, February, we're looking to recruit, because obviously the magazine's lifted off. We're going to be going back to events. Most of the people in the organisation, we shifted them from events to magazine. So now we're going to have to shift them back. But to shift them back, somebody needs to replace them, if that makes sense. So we're going to be looking to recruit editors, journalists, and photographers and people like that.
Wow. So you've got quite a lot going on. And it's sort of almost like setting up a mini newspaper of sorts.
Yeah, sorts. But
with longer lead times.
Yeah, it has gone well. We're getting some good subscriptions from some big corporates who are buying multiple copies and saying, for our offices around the country, they could do with reading this. And I mean some really big corporates. So the subscription side is building quite nicely as well. And remember, we've only done one issue. We're only into our second issue yet. So you can imagine where we could be in about a year's time.
Wow. Okay. The last couple of weeks in our show has been quite focused in on vaccines and Pfizer, BioNTech, and there's a lot of, let's say, noise that's happening about what's going to happen. So what I want to do is I want to steer away from that topic, because we are the alternative property business solutions community. We don't really want to be talking what everybody's talking about. We want to be talking about the things that people aren't talking about and bringing them to light, because they're the ones that need to be focused in on to try and help people establish their strength to fight the pandemic, let's say. So top 10 strategies for being more effective in this very ever-changing landscape of business. Now, first major question I have for you, Ninder Singh, is the lot of I've had two people now saying that in March they're seeing some sort of war or some sort of global meltdown, or I mean, I spoke to quite a famous psychic reader who reads for quite famous people like Sadie Frost and dare I say it, sort of people even more well known than that. I might not be able to give their names because of NDAs and things. And she said that she's got a feeling that March next year, which is only around the corner, with something's going to happen. Now, obviously, we want to be optimistic on the show about what can happen, what can't happen. What's your take? Is there any third dimensional thing that can happen that we're not aware of? I mean, it could there be a war with Korea and Korea get completely blown up, because anything could happen in a situation where you've got a mass pandemic, because where there's chaos, there's desperation. With desperation, there's potentials for, let's just say, unpredictability and things happening beyond our control. What's your take?
Well, I was going to say quite the reverse, actually. I was going to say a couple of things. We've got a change in leadership at the United States. So we've got a bit more of a moderate leader who I suspect would intervene if there was a international problem. Secondly, I think the fact that even today, I've heard the Chinese are now rolling out a vaccine for export for the poorer countries. So if anything, the vaccine will move out much quicker throughout the world, which will hopefully lead to being for bringing that sort of uncertainty down. Yes, I know Europe, Germany, France are looking at more lockdowns, but remember those are short term as we roll out the vaccine. So I think internationally, in fact, I'd say the reverse. I think the situation will get better. Domestically, our problem is Brexit. Is how do we cope with Brexit and the vaccine at the same time? But in terms of international, I must concede, sitting where I am at the moment, I don't see anything brewing that could lead to that person saying it could be in March. And if she does, or he proved to be right, tell him to ring me because I could do with some lottery numbers.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move on, because we're getting to a stage now where I mean, us as a business in the property and finance business, we don't really talk that much about what we do on the show, because I'm hosting today because VJ Sal I think is one of his helicopters probably not working properly, so he's probably stuck on an island somewhere. So we'll get him rescued and brought him over. Hopefully it'll take a bit longer, so you can have more of Lakhi Singh rather than VJ Sal.
Oh, it's fine.
I'm just joking, but we wish VJ VJ Sal to try and get back from his helicopter from the island. So anyway, going back, Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, what we've been doing is we're noticing a massive shift in lending. A lot of lenders are now being a lot more constrained in their lending because there is considered to be a tightness in the lending market behind the scenes. So they're becoming very exclusive in terms of dealing with higher quality clients, which have got lower gearing. What does that mean from our point of view? Anyway, Ninder, we're finding that there's a lot of international family offices and a lot of organizations coming in which are really well funded, but they've got very deep pockets, and they will actually soak up a lot of the market, but lend to really exceptional projects because they can pick and choose now, because a lot of the lending has been constricted by local banks now, or a lot of UK banks are hardly lending anything, as well as a lot of the term lending type operations in the UK. So I think private equity is going to be big. What's your take?
Well, it depends on the project. It depends the sector. It depends on the risk. It depends on how strong the balance sheet and the P&L account is. Depends on the management team. Now, what we do know, if you looked at yesterday's IPO for Airbnb, I think they've doubled their share price overnight. So what that tells you, there is a lot of money around in the world. We're talking about the big global picture. That money has to be placed somewhere because they're struggling to find it where, struggling to find places to place that money. So at the top end, at the big end, there is money. If you've got the right business model, the right team, the right opportunity, there is money for anybody. If you're struggling to get money, that means your business case hasn't been sufficiently strong enough to persuade someone to lend you the money. And I think you need to look at your business case and ask yourself, why is that? I always say, never blame other people. Look at yourself for the situation you are in. So if you're struggling to get the money for whatever that project is, and I don't know what those projects are, you're going to have to look back at your business plan and ask yourself, or ask those people who have said no, why have they said no? And risk appetite is difficult at the moment. People still don't know what 2021 looks like from an economic perspective. They still don't know the level of redundancies. They don't know what consumer demand and confidence and business confidence will be until we get into 2021. And of course, we still don't know whether the rollout and the distribution of the vaccine will be as efficient as we all hope it would be. So look, if you're not getting the money, my argument would be there's lots of money around, and there's lots of people trying to find places to place their money, but they won't just throw it away. They're looking for high quality projects.
Okay, so certainly the major change for anybody out there in terms of top 10 things you need to be aware of. Number one, there is money out there, but if you're a smaller organization, a smaller developer, you may find it difficult to get money because anything above 10 million is easier to get. If you're trying to get 3 million or 4 million or 2 million, the type of lenders that lend that money are super conservative. So you've got to be super vanilla, as they say in the IFA market. You've got to be super clean, super credit. If one ear is bigger than the other, then you're not going to get the money. So just be careful. Obviously, the joke about the ear is not correct, just in case the viewers out there take that seriously. Point one.
Yeah, I think another thing, Lakhi, is reputation and brand. So even if your project is 50-50, but if you have a great reputation or a great brand of having delivered in the past, then you will come up trumps. And that's why we always say marketing and branding of your own personal brand and of your organization's brand is so important, because that becomes the intangible that human behavior can't put their finger on, but it's part of their thinking. And if you don't have a great reputation, or if you've not delivered projects in the past, people do take that into account. So there is that, apart from the business plan itself, it's the people behind it and the reputation behind the brand as well. So you should always be looking to improve and enhance that.
Okay, so number point one today is try to focus in on a higher quality of lending. Try to go for the bigger numbers. So if you're a small developer, let's say in property terms, turning over a couple of million a year, you may want to JV with a slightly bigger developer to create a better brand and give yourself a bit more kudos to try and get the bigger lending between the three of you or two of you. Certainly, I'm actually literally doing a case. I'm doing 4 cases like that at the moment, where I've got a developer that I've got a lender that will lend £100 million at 2.5% a year, but they've agreed to get 5 developers with 5 different projects which know each other under one project, because they're positioning themselves in that way to get that type of funding. And the same goes for 3 smaller developers that I've got. There's another lender that lending 100% funding, and you have to put 10% down for the duration of the term of the loan. So there is amazing lending out there, but that can also be used for business. So any mid-tier businesses that are looking for funding, obviously there's due diligence, there's you've got to have some credentials, you've got to probably have, I mean, some of the amazing thing about some of these products are that some of these family offices, they're not looking for personal guarantees, but these are by private invite only type products. So they don't really go out to market to the normal individual. They'll only be placed by invite only. So I can't even go into really where they're from and who the organizations behind them are. But we certainly can actually place that sort of funding for clients now, so which is huge. So that's the second topic, that money is available, that quality money, and then you should potentially be looking to joint venture with quality companies if you want to enhance your brand and increase your reputation and develop a stronger set of books with the accounts, etc. So that's point 2 for today. So Linda, tell me a little bit more about the events business from your point of view. I mean, a lot of organizations out there have held back. When do you sort of seriously see that coming alive? Because and then going back to what it was, let's just say end of last year, when there wasn't any pandemic on the horizon in the let's say October, November last year.
Well, if I just take you back to March, we had a number of big events lined up. By April, it became obvious that we were struggling with the environment, so we cancelled our Wolverhampton event, which was in June. We then cancelled our London event at the Hilton in Park Lane. We then cancelled our November event, which is only a couple of weeks ago. And we've also already cancelled our Birmingham event in February. But the flurry of news around the vaccine last couple of weeks means we think the London event will happen in September. We're pretty certain the Leicester event will happen in November. What's 50-50 is whether we can get the Wolverhampton event away in the summer. And that's going to be the big question. And we won't really know till probably the first couple of weeks in January, depending on how the tier structures worked, how the vaccine's been rolled out, and just to see how people feel about meeting up and chatting and having cups of tea. And if hospitality starts to come back, then you start to get that trend towards people saying, well, actually, remember, we only need 67%, 60 to 70% vaccine rolled out to start thinking about that sort of herd immunity. But look, I've said to you previously, I think 2021 is one of recovery. And I think 2022 will be the year that we really do see everything returning back to normal. And for the economy to return to pre-COVID, probably 2023. But that's the sort of trajectory I can see. And I think people in business, and property is a business, is that gives you an idea of where we're going. Now, some of the complications from a property perspective is inflation. Because if Brexit doesn't happen, or Brexit does happen rather, and tariffs are placed on all the goods coming in, then you will get some what we call cost push inflation. Prices will go up, and it'll be interesting how the banks respond to that. Now, you and I have always kept talking about, will interest rates go up, won't interest rates go up? But if inflation starts to go up purely because of Brexit, the bank may be forced to move its interest rates up. And then you know what that happens to borrowing. But listen, we're still in, although most economists are saying, we don't expect interest rates to go up for a couple of years. It all depends on how the economy recovers and whether inflation becomes a problem.
Okay, I mean, it's quite a loaded topic around interest rates and Brexit. But to keep it very narrow, I mean, Brexit and the economy somewhat have become no news, because all the news is about illness. not wellness, and how to get well. So I think those things are really, how do you say, left at the bottom of the pile in terms of newsworthiness. Now, the impact of them are going to be huge, though, compared to the COVID-19 as a health matter. So that's actually to do with your physical health. But the economy itself actually means it's the bread and butter that you put on your table for your food, your shelter. So the impact of that could potentially, in another way, in another dimension, become more or less impossible for 8 to 15 million people who are on the breadline in the UK. So, what say you about how people should be looking to cope with all these other dimensions, which are not really being tackled by the news?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a famous phrase, isn't it? This isn't just an economic tragedy. This is a human tragedy, a health tragedy, and I think how society functions does influence business. How business functions influences society, and anybody in business, including property, we need to keep an eye on the whole big picture, because if you invest in a property or a business and everything goes south, in other words, consumer confidence disappears, business investment disappears, it will impact you. It doesn't matter whether you're in business or in property or in any particular sector, it does come rolling back. But my general prognosis is, going forward, I think next year will be recovery. We'll be just recovering, getting ourselves back in and rebuilding for the future. The government's there to help, and hopefully help, and working with local politicians and those people who are disadvantaged and haven't had the sort of help they need.
Okay, I mean, what is a strategy that businesses and property companies should be now thinking about? Because there's lots of unknowns. I don't know whether you're aware, but I'll just put a little fact on the table for everybody out there as well. When banks are lending money now, they are, in terms of their stress testing, they're actually putting up interest rates of 10% to work out really whether they want to lend to you or not. Now, a lot of investors and property portfolio people are already in denial about the pandemic. Now, when we talk to them about property, they're also in denial about interest rates even going up, even the possibility of them going up, because they think it can't happen, because in 1988 they went up to 16%. Now the banks are testing at 10%. So the question is that they can go up, something can happen. Now, if they do, let's say, hopefully they don't, but I'm actually saying that they definitely will go up, because the only way is up. Some people are saying they're only going to go up to a couple of percent, but even a couple of percent actually is enough to break the camel's back type situation. What do you think would be the top 2 or 3 things that businesses should be thinking about now to cover their back? Because it's all well us being positive, but the reality is that the numbers talk. How do they protect themselves from, let's just say, complete disaster in the industry sector, especially now that you have a lot of vulnerable sectors with COVID-19? If the vaccine doesn't get rolled out, there's still tier 3 lockdowns. Basically, a lot of businesses are just going to die instantly. What's the sort of anecdote, do you think?
So I think a couple of things. I think we've said this a number of times. You need to be stress testing. You need to be building in scenarios that if interest rates go up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10%, can your current business model cope? One. Secondly, assuming interest rates stay the same, but consumer demand goes down, so the demand for property goes down, the demand for high street properties go down. Can you cope? if some of your tenants go bust, can you cope in terms of stress test because there's no income coming in and you're going to have to cover the outgoings? Thirdly, if that does happen, what's the appetite for tenants to move into their place? Can you cope if they don't? Because if you can't, then the banks will want the property back off you. So these are the scenarios you do need to put in, because recovery won't be instant. Recovery will still take a couple of years. As I said, I think pre-COVID, probably 2023. So I think if you're not building in those stress tests and being really, really prudent, and I mean really prudent. I mean, what I did when we hit April, I went really prudent and said, well, there's no income from the events for 3 years. Can I cope? I put zeros in the top line and we did all the numbers. And then we said, well, if that does happen, this is where it will be the end of year 3. This will be our cash reserves. What can we do between now and then to cut out unnecessary costs? Because that's where we could be. Now, luckily for us, and everybody in the events game, looks like we're going to be up and running next year. So it hasn't played out to its worst case, but we had planned for it. And what we'd also planned that if it was going 3 years, what would we do in the meantime to maintain our brand? And as I said to you earlier, that's what brought this, because we then thought, well, we've got to launch another business to diversify in case the worst case scenario happens. So what are your plans, or what are your plans if interest rates go up, if consumer demand goes down, if the amount of insolvencies go down and the general consumer confidence is down? How are you going to cope? What are your plans? You need to plan now, not when it hits you.
So there we have it from a VVIP. It's all in the planning. So if you plan ahead, basically, then you plan to succeed. Is probably another way of putting the. There's a famous phrase for. I think if you, how does it go? If you plan, if you don't plan,
if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, or something like that.
That's the one. Yeah,
Is that the one? Is that the one?
That's the one. Yeah. You read my mind.
Fail, yeah.
So I think being on the Alternative Property Business Solutions community, we've got over 1,300 people now since this show's been going, Linda. So you've probably seen it grow. So there's a lot of people on here now, and a lot of people watching. And I think we're getting at least roughly about 100 or 200 people watching the show. Either live, I think meant to be 20, 30 people, and across different platforms. And then we got a lot of things happening. What's your general message to people that are involved in business if they're starting off now? Because there's lots of people that are looking, who've possibly been furloughed or they've lost their job, and they're looking for a new way of actually reestablishing themselves in a market where there's it's a bit of a wild west, because the landscape is completely unknown. The terrain is somewhat unknown in a lot of areas, and a lot of traditional business, because the whole carpet's been pulled away from them, such as a lot of property, even though property prices are going up, the lending is not quite there in the way it was. So if you're starting off, you being able to get any money from any banks is actually nigh on impossible. And if you are trying to do transactions, some of the purchases that your people are doing are taking 3 to 6 months to go through, either because of the lending, or because the land registry is very slow, or the surveyors are slow, or the estate agent's slow. So the whole supply chain is now sort of, you could sort of say, toxic from the variables it used to have. So in relation to all those variables, obviously you need to plan, but somebody starting off, what are the, let's say, 4 or 5 key things they should be doing to establish the basics to make sure they succeed?
I think firstly, when you have a crisis or a downturn, opportunities emerge. So I think you need to survey the environment and look for those opportunities. Where do those opportunities lie? Where are they? Can you see some? if you can see the opportunity, then you got to ask yourself, do you have the skill set to be able to maximize that opportunity? So do you have the skill set? If you do, then put a plan together on how you intend to service that opportunity. If you don't have the skill set, are you able to bring in people that can help you with that skill set? So opportunity first. There's no point you doing something because you're brilliant at something but nobody else wants it. That's not an opportunity. That's just you having a skill set that perhaps nobody wants at the moment. And that can happen at the moment. It could be something relevant later on. So start with the opportunity first. Where are the opportunities? And you just mentioned about a supply chain being slow. Are there opportunities to speed that supply chain up? Could you help speed that up? Because that in itself is an opportunity. And if you can, then what resources do you need? Financial resource, manpower resource, people, skills. What sort of resource will you need? Is it accommodation? Is it finance? Get all those things together. Use the time between now and when you do put it together to network like crazy. And you can do that offline. You don't have to do it. You can do that online, even if you can't meet people. So research your market. You've now got the time. You now need to reach out to people who are better than you, people who understand that segment, get some advice. You'd be amazed how people are happy to give you advice if you contact the right people. Put the planning in place and then just execute. Don't hang around. Don't over-research. Don't over-plan to such an extent that the opportunity is there, disappears.
Okay, now that's all really great advice. I mean, I think what will be good for the viewers to know are probably a couple of areas. Like I think just to give people some insight, when I got involved in, let's say, internet project management about 15 years ago, or literally, I think it was about 25 years ago, I knew that the internet was going to be big. So getting in there first and understanding a technology or getting involved in an area where you know there's going to be a margin in it. So a lot of people have jumped into PPP and providing, being a broker of actually sourcing gloves or robes or masks, etc., etc. So that's one area. But there may be something that could be pretty big. In this market, in the property sector, I think that buying property, but getting your funds ready now, and actually having access to cash, and actually buying out pockets of property, because anybody that's been furloughed or businesses that have got issues and they need to let go of their leases. So in real estate, there are going to be quite diverse opportunities. So I think one area that there is money and may still be money is PPE, which is the protective equipment that people need to buy during COVID-19, especially doctors and nurses, the supply of that. And then, I mean, another quite interesting sector has been providing screens for, see-through plastic screens. They've got that on a lot of TV programs now. We've got screens in between people so they can sort of touch each other on the screen like that, but they have that screen between because they can't really maintain the social distancing quite in the same way. And then in property, I think raising funds, having access to funds is probably a really good idea, because you've got the opportunity to go and buy a lot of stock. And if you've got enough money to actually carry on buying during any sort of turbulence or interest rate hikes, then not only can you be looking to protect yourself, but you can also be looking to, make best of the opportunity, which is every cloud has a silver lining type situation. So getting funds ready to start buying assets could be something that you could be doing, especially if you've got the credentials. So those are just 2 or 3 little things that I can think of. I mean, you have a vast array of experience across 20, 30 industry sectors in terms of the Business Influencer magazine. What are the 4 or 5 areas that you think for the viewers, if they're trying to get into something, that you think, okay, well, if I had a bit of time and I wasn't focused in on my 3 or 4 strategic areas of interest, I might actually consider that. If somebody asked me, what I could get into as a growth area, what are your ideas about that? Just to give some insights.
Well, there's been a discernible shift to digital, without a shadow of a doubt. Anybody who's linked to an activity that can be linked to digital, there are opportunities, because I think we've now all changed as a society, and I think we're all a lot more open to digital. So if you're already in business or want to be in business, and you can add a digital aspect to your business. So again, with the magazine, it's available digitally. We knew that there's now a growing market for digital. So I think there's a lot of opportunities around the digital space. There are obviously always going to be opportunities around people looking to sell at a distressed price, but that takes you back to your point. Make sure you have the finance available. So there are opportunities in buying up distressed assets, whether that's property or business. There will always be opportunities in crisis for that. You'll be amazed how many people now who were thinking of maybe selling in 3 to 5 years' time and retiring are actually saying, I'm going to throw the towel in now, actually. I've done what I wanted to do. The year off has taught me that maybe I need to go into. So these kind of people will be in the marketplace looking to sell. But it's back to what you said. It's spotting the opportunities. Digital is definitely a space you want to look at. Housing, listen, there's always been a shortage of housing. There will always be a shortage of housing. That's not a new opportunity. That's been as an opportunity for a long time. So obviously that kind of development will always happen. Planning permission is obviously a problem. Land acquisition is obviously a problem, but those opportunities still lie. So I think mostly around the digital space, and that's with any sector, but around the digital space will always be opportunities for people to gain something.
Okay, I mean, a wise man, funny enough, he's not here today. VJ Sal said to me about, we've known each other a long time. He said to me about 13 years ago, he said, there's money always to be made at the real bottom end of the market and at the real top end of the market. And he said, you can't really go wrong. So you can make money on a margin-based business, on selling hundreds of things literally a minute or a second or an hour. And you can make money on selling luxury goods at the top end of the market, because people with money will always have money. And people that have maybe little money, they'll always have essential needs. So from your point of view, at the bottom end of the market, the top end of the market, what are the 2 or 3 growth areas? I think I've got my own opinion on it, which I'll give you very quickly, which is that I think, I went to a launch of the new Ghost Rolls-Royce, and the brand ambassador for that company saying that we're actually still selling a lot of these, and in fact have sold more during the recession than they've or the pandemic than they've sold in the same year last year. So it could be sales talk, it could be true. Then at the bottom end of the market, there's a need for PPE, which I've already mentioned. There's a high transaction, high volume, high sales type business at the distribution level. So people are buying literally £100 million worth of stock and selling it on from one government to another, or deal making. So both things going on there. What are the what are the sort of 2 or 3 growth areas at the bottom end and the top end from your point of view where you see things happening?
Okay, well look, the latest stats showed that the richer actually got richer during the pandemic. So I think your guy selling the Rolls-Royce might have an element of truth there. But we also know in terms of uncertainty, people do trade down at the bottom end. They do trade down. So people like B&M, the discount stores, they've had a fantastic year. So in times of uncertainty, people then on the essentials do trade down and say, well, look, let's hunker down, bunker down for maybe a dodgy 12 months. People at the top end have made a lot of money, and they've actually still continued to spend. I don't think that really changes. I think that's always been the case. But like I said, I think we'll have seen the worst of it. It can now only go up in a northerly direction. So do your stress testing, but also be confident and bold, and ask yourself, are you ready to look for those opportunities that are going to be there now and are going to emerge over the next 12 months? And property is a classic example. Properties, you can always see, as I said, distressed sales, and there's always opportunities. In when you have uncertainty, that always brings out the best when it comes to opportunities. So you've got to have that. You've got to have that bold, positive mindset and be ready to exploit opportunities when they come. You'll always have opportunities at all ends of the market, at top end and the bottom end.
I think there's one particular opportunity which I think is probably passed people by, which is that there's a huge requirement for I'd say mental wellness or mental health, and the reason being is I think anybody that I'm beginning to notice, actually, I've just had quite a lot of comments being made in the last 5-10 people from different people about other people saying that they've noticed a lot of difference in people post-lockdown.
Okay.
In terms of their well-being. So a lot of people, I think there's not many people that haven't put on weight.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably seen the classic sort of cartoon thing going on where people standing next to a fridge in, 2019, and then post-lockdown 2021, and they're twice the size of something. That's sort of like a common joke that's been flying around on Facebook and TikTok. Now, so a lot of that is about wellness. So I think there's a huge potential of actually maybe creating a solution for wellness or health clinics, because people are going to need to almost be reactivated from their slumber. It's a bit like hibernating badgers or animals actually having to hibernate, but we're being forced to do it of sorts. And that actually has a psychological impact, whether we like to admit it or not, but having, like a year worth of worry and grief about not being able to go out, see your loved ones, not really being able to go out when you want. And a lot of people, especially those that are quite sensitive, are going to actually probably think, okay, well, I wasn't, I'm okay. Nothing's really a real problem. But reality is that you can see it on their face, you can see it on their physique. Now, that actually I think could be quite big in terms of solving a problem and potentially, creating something where you could make a difference. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. I think mental well-being and mental resilience, I think, is going to be important over the next 12 to 24 months as people start to wrestle with working hybrid, working from home, working in the office, readjusting back to the world they used to know, the rate of which they readjust. I think that's a fantastic point. I think that's going to be, again, a major issue going forward. And it's a big problem for organizations, how they manage their workforce and how they decide that hybrid system of working. And again, people in transport, people who drove trains and buses, and how they're going to cope and how the vaccine brings them back in. It's a very complex world. It's a very, very complex world. I think that's a point well made.
Well, I think, a lot of we live in a very sort of secular society. People are already very, they seek companionship, especially if they're elderly and living in an inner city environment. Having the lockdown to cope with, on top of being isolated somewhat, can you imagine the mental impact of that? So I've seen, between me and you, I've seen people, I would have to be careful to say who this is, but basically I've seen a few people that I saw in January of this year, and I've seen them in the last couple of months, and I noticed that they look like they've aged 5 years actually. That's what I wanted to say. But obviously, if I named who they were, they probably wouldn't talk to me again. So, question is, there's a huge responsibility actually for ourselves that we've got to take. How are you coping? How does you yourself cope with all the instability of what's going on? It must be also a huge pressure on yourself as well, of sorts, or are you? Is it too much of a personal question?
No. Look. I mean, when the lockdown first happened, I went into what's a classic model of self-denial. I didn't think there was a problem. I thought this problem's going to go away. It became clear once we rolled into April that actually, hold on, this could be a long-term 3, 4, 5-year problem. And what are we going to do? But we were fortunate that we moved quite quick into the magazine and the publishing side. Might have been an excellent question to ask me had we not done that, and be able to move our people around into publishing. And luckily we had a good set of people that had a good skill set that we could do that. I wonder how I would have been had we not made that quick move. I wonder, and it's a very good question, how and where would have I coped, and how would have I coped with not having a business at all because the events had all been cancelled? That might have been a really, really interesting question to ask. And my mental well-being, how would have I felt? But then I was proactive. I didn't hang around. I moved quickly into another business. And now, hopefully, fingers crossed, as we get into the summer, we'll have 2 flourishing businesses. Both the events has come back, and the publishing is now taking a life of its own.
Okay, I mean, I think because you're in the business sector, have been sort of quite a few decades, let's say. You were able to potentially be very quick in your thinking. I think the majority of people, they probably would have probably thought something will change tomorrow, or something will change next month or next quarter, and then by the time they got around to changing anything, it was probably too late, and they've already lost truckloads of money, especially in the hospitality business, restaurants, pubs, bars. I mean, if I go to a local village here called Pinner, nearly all the big restaurants are closed. Literally, they've shut down. So Carluccio's, Pizza Express, I think it was ZZ's, Zaza. Well, I'm not sure about Zaza. I think that one might still be open. But out of the top 8 restaurants in the village, I think there's only 2 left. So that's actually, almost 80% roughly of really what's happening at the restaurant level. So that's a huge impact. Do you see them coming back on again?
And I was going to say, and the people who own that property, in other words, the landowners or the people who own those properties, now wonder, they're scratching their heads and asking that very same question you've just asked. Will people come back? Will people pick those restaurants up again? Will there be demand for that high street around the village? Will that affect housing pricing because people aren't coming in? Suddenly you open up a lot of questions, and someone somewhere is going to have to answer those. Is what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, there's likelihood to be a move away from a lot of I suppose restaurants and things, and probably maybe more takeaway, because literally a lot of those businesses now gone out permanently out of operation because they don't have the fortitude to be able to come back into the market again, possibly because it's not easy to get a lease, it's not easy to set up a corporate structure, and if they've been clever in how they've downsized and they've still got the ability to scale up again, it's going to take years, maybe even a decade, to try and get some of the businesses back to where they were. So I think a lot really going on really in that sector. So Ninder, we've got only about another 6 minutes left. So just give us a quick summary of what you're doing for the week and what are the 3 or 4 key things that people should be looking out for to ensure that they're strong and going forward for the next year or so, and how they deal with the potentials of what they're doing and all the risks of what they're doing?
So a couple of things. I think one of the things I've learned, and I'm going to now start doing, is I'm going to read a lot more. Read a lot more about leadership and
reading is good. I like that.
Yeah, and personal development. And I've never done it before, to be honest with you. So I think it's probably because I'm now in the publishing game, so I'm reading quite a bit and I'm talking to people. So I think ask yourself now, can you improve yourself as a person in terms of knowledge, in terms of understanding how you could be better at business? Are you reaching out and networking with the right people? Could you network with better people who could help you? Are you continually every day as a habit, because good habits make you better at what you do? Make sure you start to build a set of habits that will put you in a positive stance. Check your numbers every morning, make sure you're on top of your numbers, project everything. So build some good habits, do some personal development, reach out to people who are better than you, continue to market yourself and your product and your business, continue to engage with your current customers and clients and reach out for some new ones, and start to now proactively go out and market yourself. Because if your competitors aren't doing it, you're already one step ahead. If your competitors are doing it, you're one step behind. So really, you need to now start putting your foot forward, because it can only get better now. We've been through what some people would call was an apocalypse. The last 9 months, 12 months, been a nightmare. But I think we're now seeing the beginning of the end. And I think you need to start thinking like that.
Well, that's fantastic. I think that's some very good tips there for those of you listening. I'll give you a quick synopsis for myself as well. I think based upon what we've discussed today, just a quick summary. Number one, I think mental health is really important.
Yep.
So if you're feeling down and out because of what's happened, or it's been quite disruptive because you've had loved ones affected because of COVID-19, you're worried it's quite a worrying thing if you can't see family members. So mental health, I think is number one, because if you're healthy in mind, healthy in body, then the business will take care of itself. Okay, so that sort of leads into personal development. I think personal development is all well and good, but if you're not feeling quite right, feeling too stressed, anxious, distressed, or there's some signs of depression, being stuck at home, then I think it's important that you look after your mental well-being. I think the second thing is exercise and diet.
Yep.
All the basics, drinking water, really just doing the basics for your health. Perfect. I've got mine just over there. I'm going to get it in a second. And I think thirdly, get a checkup done of your health. I've got some of the best health practitioners in the world that I work with, and then Ninder, I think I'll introduce you to some of them, and they will read into what's going in your body and what the issues are beyond any sort of booper checkup.
Yeah.
I've got that access. So they can also look at really how well your chakras are balanced, not only and also look at really any ancestral DNA issues that affect you and how they may manifest themselves. So we've got that sort of tech that I know about. So if anybody's interested, please do get in touch. Happy to introduce you to some of the world's best practitioners to up your health. So I think mental health and physical health, I think they go a long way in doing the fundamentals for you. If you can look after those, then I think anything that Ninder said are then the next step up. Because if you're not looking after your health and your mental wellness, then you'll find that you're going to be doing all these other things, but people aren't going to take you that seriously if you they don't feel like you're really quite present to them, or you're a bit over anxious, because you need to be in your most positive self to be able to be successful out there. So there we have it. We had a fantastic interview. Thank you very much, Viji, for coming on. Thank you very much to our VVIP Ninder Singh Johal from the Business Influencer magazine, who's an events host and also very well known for his royalties, and also the Indian Bhangra music scene, pioneers in the Bhangra music scene. So thank you again, Viji, and Sat Sri Akal, and goodbye, and sayonara, ci vediamo in Italian, and we'll catch up very soon, Monday. Thank you, Ninder. We'll catch up next week.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.